Hi, welcome to the Gentleman's Jury. I'm your host, Robbie, and today we're going to be talking about habits and habit building. Specifically, I want to talk about this awesome book I had read on Audible called, I didn't read, I had listened to on Audible called Atomic Habits. And the interesting thing about this book is that it breaks down in a very easy to follow format of how you can change your habits step by step. The first chapter, it begins kind of talking about this British cycling team. And the British cycling team couldn't, for the life of them, get a single. They couldn't get any sponsors. They were just garbage, right? And the company that makes some of the best bikes in France wouldn't even go near them, because they were afraid that if anyone saw these British guys um, riding their bikes, that business would plummet. So what did the British coach do? Well, he kind of did something genius. He looked at what they were doing and decided, you know what? We're gonna shape this up. So he took their the van that is meant to transport the bikes, and they cleaned it out, and they fixed their bikes up, and they kept that clean, and they did all these little things that kept certain things clean and kind of gave them more of an appearance of someone professional. And what happened? This is a really interesting part. What happened is they won consistently, and they won in big events too, like the Tour de France. Crazy, right? You go from losing, and the French bicyclist shop wouldn't even touch you with a 10-foot pole because you were going to destroy their business with just how terrible you are, to being one of the top competitors. That's just insane. And that kind of touches on the first point, right? Perception. If you can look at something, just take a second, right? And observe your surroundings. And you can point out one thing wrong, right? Just one thing. For instance, I'm looking around my house right now, and the first thing I see wrong is I left an empty pot on the stove after I cooked dinner. Now I gotta go clean that up, right? Boom. Now my house looks that much, that tiny percent better. So just think about that. Sorry. And to continue on to that point, right? He kind of starts talking into how you as a person, right? If you were to change 1%, just 1%, I'm sorry about that. That's thunder. Not much I can really do about that. You just change 1%, one whole percent, you'd uh, you'd grow exponentially. It'd be just a crazy, crazy development, right? But if you lose 1%, it sends you into a spiral. And that's what he talks about, right? Finding little ways to improve yourself little by little. Just always looking for a way to improve or maintain. You don't want to decrease. The book kind of continues on, and I won't bore you with every single thing about the book, because I really want to encourage you, to go out and download this book off Audible, because I really, really want people to listen to what this guy has to say. I think he has a lot of good ideas, right? So, we're the next big thing that really stuck with me, right, was he started talking about. Sorry, it's just it got me a little excited thinking about it, right? He talked about how you as an individual, right? You do ordinary functions all the time, right? Waking up, ordinary thing. Getting out of bed, ordinary thing, right? But what are you doing wrong? Or not necessarily wrong, right? But what are you doing that might be a harmful habit, right? For me, it's that I hit snooze on my alarm clock 5 times before I roll out of bed. That's a harmful thing. For my wife, right? It's that she likes to have an energy drink in the morning to help her wake up. Also could be considered, I don't know, harmful, right? Now think about the things that you do that might not be harmful, right? For instance, say you're trying to lose weight. And he brings this up a lot in the book, right? People who want to lose weight. What's something that you could do when you get out of bed that wouldn't be harmful, right? You're not checking your phone or anything like that. You go and you weigh yourself. Boom. You go and you shower. Boom. Now your appearance is better. Now you smell better, right? You're doing things that are working towards a goal. Another big thing that the guy had said that really, really stuck with me, right? How many of you guys have a dream that you just gave up on? I mean, I did. Right? I wanted to be in the military my entire life. And then I decided it wasn't for me, right? Because in my mind, right, in the mindset I had, wasn't built around me being in the military. Yeah. So think of it. So for the next time, so as you're sitting there, right, you're sitting there right now, and you go and think, what what is my goal, right? For some of you, it might be to lose a couple pounds. For some of you, it might be to finish this book or to get a little bit smarter, or you really want that A in that class, right? Well, how about instead of thinking how you can achieve that goal, think about the type of person that would achieve that goal, right? And I'll kind of break that down a little bit better. For instance, I want to lose weight, so I backtrace, right? I backstep into the type of person who would lose weight, right? That person would probably cut junk food out. That person would probably, in a lot of sense, cut soda out. You know, stop drinking sugary drinks. Stop drinking sports drinks because they have tons of sugar in it. Right? Stick to mostly water and tea, and not sweetened tea, obviously. You know, because you're trying to lower certain amounts of sugar and watch your diet. Right? And that person would also probably follow a somewhat strict diet. And that diet could be anything from, you know, I want to fast. That sounds like that helped me lose weight. Or the much more reasonable route, right, is I'm going to slowly cut back on carbs. I'm going to slowly cut back on sugars. And I'm going to stick with protein and try and build myself up while losing weight. You know, and you got to build yourself from that template, right? Think of the person that would be the person to achieve that goal and build a template off of that. And then, he talked about kind of how in that template building, right? You make tons of unconscious decisions every day because our minds are hardwired to a specific way of thinking, right? And that is short-term rewards. All right? Think about it. You do whatever seems like it'd be pleasurable in the moment. And he goes really in depth about how you need to shift from being pleasurable in the moment to being thinking long term, right? Because anything pleasurable right now is detrimental long term. And I mean, that's not fully necessarily true, but that's the way you got to think about it, right? This piece of cake I'm eating right now is going to be so good, but in 10 years, all those pieces of cake that I decided were so good right now end up becoming, I end up being obese. But if you think, this is going to be painful right now, in the long term, it's going to be better. And that applies to things like working out, right? You decide, I'm going to work out more. So you start doing 2 or 3 push-ups a day, right? And that sucks. But in 10 years, 2 or 3 push-ups is going to be a joke. You're going to be pretty fit. Heck, you might even be addicted to doing 2 or 3 push-ups right before bed. You don't even know it, right? Because that's how quick. Or it's not really a quick thing. You can't just turn a habit on and off like that. But that's how quick your mind will go. Wow, 10 years ago, this seemed like a hassle. Today, it's nothing. So you got to kind of try and start thinking about building yourself from a template. Then he kind of moves on into habit stacking in order to help that, right? And habit stacking was a really interesting concept that I've been toying with a lot too. Okay, so essentially, what you do for habit stacking, right, is you look at your current habits and you go at 9:30 p.m. I wash the dishes, right? And you go, okay, well, at 9:30 p.m., I wash the dishes and then I wipe down the counters. Boom, you've just built another habit on top of the habit you just had. And it's a simplified version of it. He goes in much greater detail, and it sounds a lot better in the book. But overall, right, that's the quickest way to just boom build establish new habits is if you assign it to a habit that relates to it. Another big thing he talks about that's kind of this one also stuck with me because of how many times I tell myself, oh, today I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna work out. Right? How many times do you get up and you say you're going to do something, and then the day drags on, and you kind of just let it slide? And you don't particularly care about what you're really doing. You're just doing it to do it. Well, now here's what I want you to try. Right? He recommends this in the book. Right? I tell myself on June 3rd, I am going to wake up at 4:20. And I'm going to do 10 push-ups when I wake up. Boom. Now I have a specific time to do the task I want to do, right? And if I do that every day for 7 days, it'll be more likely that I'll continue, right? But if you tell yourself a specific time, a specific place, and it helps if you're even more specific, right? It's like on June 3rd, I will wake up at 4:30 and do 10 push-ups right next to my bed. And boom. Now I know where and when I'm going to perform this habit. He does go into detail, about being more and more careful about, when you decide to pick a time for a habit, and, the certain elements you need to think about when doing that kind of stuff. But overall, really effective way of thinking. I'm going to do task at this time, on this day, at this place. And now you're holding yourself accountable by saying it out loud. And you can also use this trick when you're going to do something that you shouldn't, right? So say you're trying to lose weight. And what do you decide to do? Oh, I want a candy bar. So you open it up, right? Before you eat it, just take a second, stop, and say, I'm going to eat this candy bar even though I know I shouldn't. And you'd be amazed at what your mind does the second you call yourself out. You hold yourself accountable to that goal. Which is the same reason why when certain friends ask me to come hang out, right? Or they want me to do stuff, I try not to give them vague yeses and nos and, nonchalantly commit. Now it's, well, I can't do X with you today because I have to do finals. And then boom, now I'm working on my finals. And at some point after, the stress dies down or something, you go, okay, on this day, at this time, I will come and hang out. And it's not always, I'm still learning from it. This is probably my third time listening to this book because I really like the ideas that it's trying to build on. Right? But it really digs into if you do X, X will happen. And they talk about this holding yourself accountable. He talks about it, and I think the idea kind of originated in Japan. With if you ever go to Japan and you watch the train system, right? They follow a system of pointing and saying, right? So a train comes into station, and a guy points at the speedometer and says the time or the speed out loud. They point to the doors and they say all clear. And by doing this extra action of pointing at something, and saying it, you're now holding everyone else. You're letting everyone else know that you are taking accountability for that situation, right? And I mean, it also helps if you, we'll kind of get to this in a little bit, but if you have an accountability buddy or, someone you enter like an agreement with. But kind of back to this idea of pointing and saying, right? You can do this with almost anything. Here's a really good example, right? Say you want to watch TV, and you're sitting there and you're scrolling through. Well, guess what? You should have turned off the TV. Now, say you're sitting there and you want to watch TV, right? You go, I want to watch TV. I want to watch, and I'll say like American Dad, right? I've now named a show, and I go, I want to watch American Dad for 2 episodes. You now know what you want to watch and for how long. And now it's up to you to hold yourself accountable to that. But don't turn on the TV until you know what you want to watch to prevent mindless scrolling, right? I started doing this at work. I used to listen to podcasts at work, but I'd always be like, oh, I don't know which one, so I'm sitting there scrolling while I'm trying to do my job. And sometimes it, distracts you. Instead, go, well, I want to listen to one episode of the Joe Rogan show or the Joe Rogan podcast, right? And you watch one episode or you listen to one episode and you go, okay, cool. Now I want to listen to the last podcast on the left, which deals with like the occult and such. Boom, now you're holding yourself to I'm only using this for the entertainment purposes because I know what I want to listen to. Right, and it's not to say that you shouldn't just mindlessly scroll sometimes. I get it. That's for some people that's just a nice way of decompressing and just kind of figuring out if you want to try new things or something. That's fine. But overall, right? For instance, today I was up on my ladder and I said, I want to listen to Audible. I want to listen to Atomic Habits. So I turned on Atomic Habits and I finished that book. And I stopped and said, well, now I kind of feel like sci-fi. So I thought about it and I said, well, I want to listen to something narrated by Will Wheaton. So then I used a free credit on Audible, which is super useful, by the way. And I'm starting Ready Player One, which is drastically different from the movie, which is really cool to hear differences and such. But I'm holding myself accountable to what I'm wanting to do by simply saying what I want and when I want to do it. And this really helps with accountability buddies, right? Because then you can walk in, tell your accountability buddy, hey, I don't want to have my phone for 4 hours today. You hand over your phone for 4 hours. Then you get it back and you get to, after that you get to listen to your podcasts or whatever. But you want to limit your screen time. And you can take this, you can be your own accountability partner too, in a sense, right? When it comes to this. So for instance, say you should really focus more on like schoolwork or spending time with your spouse or anything in general, right? But you're just so glued to that TV. Well, in the book they had a saying, make it hidden and it'll become unknown, right? If you make it inconvenient, it's going to make it more difficult for you to want to do it. So what my wife and I started doing is at night we'll watch 2 episodes of American Dad, and then we'll unplug the Xbox. Now I can't watch American Dad. And then we'll turn off the TV and unplug the TV. And if you want to take this a step further, right, you can take the Xbox and you can put it in the closet. And now it's even more out of the way. So if you really want to use it, now you really have to, know what you want in order to want to pull it out of there. And the same thing can apply to like a room, right? In the book, he mentions this famous guy who I forget his name at the moment, but he went through this idea, and it was to he was. Everyone's like, "Wow, you're really good at everything you do, and your house is always so neat." And he's like, "Well, truth is, I'm really lazy. What I do is I reset the room, right?" And I've started doing this a lot. You take, so like for instance, I made sandwiches for tomorrow, right? So I pull out bread, you pull out mayonnaise, you pull out mustard, you pull out, you know, meat and cheese for a typical ham and cheese sandwich, right? What I started doing is I'll pull out the bread and I'll lay, 2 pieces down or 4 pieces down, depending on if I'm having 2 sandwiches. And then before I pull out the next ingredient, I wrap up the bread and put it back. Then I go and I grab the mayonnaise and mustard. And I spread that out how I like it, and then I put those away, and I grab the cheese and the ham. And I put those, down, and boom, my ham and cheese is made, and all I got to put away now is the ham and cheese. Because I took the time before each step to reset. Now, obviously, you don't have to take it to that kind of extreme, right? You could just be like, oh, well, I want to reset the room. So you say you're just watching TV or something. So you set the remote down on the coffee table and you kind of adjust the pillows on the couch. Boom, you're done, right? You did all that. You didn't have to like get up, set the phone or set the remote down back where it really belonged, and then go and mess with the TV and make sure you clean it or something. And you don't have to go crazy with it. But the idea is that you take time to just reset and go about your day. Um, and it's definitely something worth trying. And that book was called Atomic Habits. And I really, really recommend it to you guys. I mean, like, I've read a lot of books and I wouldn't recommend a ton of them to, just a vast majority of people, but I really recommend people give this one a listen or a read. If you're more into reading, just buy it. It's definitely worth it. The other book I wanted to kind of talk about is this book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And it goes through how he developed this mentality of never quitting and always finding a way, right? And the reason I bring it up is because that book talks subtly about habits. I mean, it's so subtle, you wouldn't even, at first, you don't even notice. And when you sit there and he goes through he kind of goes through his personal history growing up. He didn't have a very good childhood. Life was hard. But he escaped that, and then he went to middle or high school, and he still had that kind of punk attitude because he felt the world owed him something because his life was kind of hard. And he leaves that, or he graduates barely, and then he gets this job as a rat exterminator, right? He's doing that, and then he goes to shower one day, and he in the shower he hears a commercial for the Navy SEALs. And he rushes out of the shower and he sits down and he watches it. And you can see, or he could see in himself being a Navy SEAL. And mind you, at this time he's like 300 pounds of just so he's a big kind of chunky dude. Not the first thing you'd think as a Marine material, right? Or not? I'm sorry, not Marine, Navy SEAL material, right? He probably wouldn't be marine material either, but that's beside the point. He talked about how, because he wanted this so bad, he thought about everything a SEAL would be. He bought into the ethos. I mean, he bought in hard too. And he was like fully driven to commit this goal. And as I'm sitting there listening to this, and I recommend this book too, because it really gives you this interesting idea of just like sitting and thinking about what you're doing, what your what your what your goals are and how you could achieve them, right? But he busts his ass. He works out all every day. He doesn't, one day he messes up and he does 24 pull-ups instead of 25, and he went home and he's like, no, f that. He goes and he does another set, and I'm thinking to myself, that's an intense dude. That's a dude willing to not quit. And it's because he bought into the ethos. He knew what a Navy SEAL should be, and he tried to mold himself to that. And kind of getting back into Atomic Habits, they talk about how your personality isn't this set in stone type of thing. You are who you are just because of your genes or the way you think. No, you're very malleable. You can shift, and I found this out more and more. As I've been kind of messing with these ideas and messing with how I can tinker with my habits to be the better me, right? I know that this coming Monday I'm going to go work out more because I've got it written down and I've set it. It's set. It's going to happen. I know next term I'm going to be a lot better student because I've got it set. I've set what I want, and I know the type of person that would achieve it, and I'm building myself around that. And you could too, right? It's super easy. I mean, it's not easy by any means. This is years of dedication and hard work, right? That you might not even see a payoff for 10, 15, 20 years, but it doesn't matter because it's something that you're working towards. And if you give yourself these little nuggets, you know, getting not to get sidetracked too much, but going back to Atomic Habits, right? He talks about this specific, sales guy, and he motivated himself to make more business calls and more sales calls, right? By having a one glass full of paper clips and one glass empty. And every time he made a sales call, he moved one paper clip to the other. Instant gratification. That's what we live for. That's how our brains are hardwired. We live for that instant gratification, right? So when David Goggins wanted to be a Navy SEAL, right? He went into the Navy, called a whole bunch of guys. One guy, most of them laughed him off, but one guy finally, got him in there. He gets weighed, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you're kind of a big boy, but you already knew that, right? Well, this is how much time you have to lose that, so you better get to it." So he starts working out. He starts, studying for the ASVAB because he was really scared of not passing the ASVAB, right? Because that's probably his bigger fear, right? He's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna lose this weight, but I don't know if I'm smart enough to get in." And I've been there. I joined the military once. I didn't have to worry about not being. Mine was actually the opposite. My ASVAB score was good, but physically I was a marshmallow. I was a Bobby Hill looking guy, as one drill sergeant would one day tell me. But as he's losing weight, guess what he's seeing? Progress. Instant gratification that he knows what he's doing is gonna work, is working. So as you're working towards your goal, try and find these different ways to give yourself instant gratification. In positive ways, obviously, right? Like, for instance, every day I make my own meal and clean up the house. My instant gratification is I get to go to bed earlier because now I don't have to wait on my wife. Her instant gratification for her whole long day is knowing that I care enough to take care of my fair share. And I'm sure there's other things that motivate her too. I'm not trying to, but that's the thing, right? I learned what my instant gratifications were, and I've been using them, and you could too, right? So here's an interesting exercise just to try out, right? Every time you do 10 push-ups, go get it. Sorry, that was a little bit. Every time you do 10 push-ups, right? Get up, dust yourself off. Yeah, if that was tough, it was tough. If it wasn't, it wasn't. But if you did the 10, you know, take a 2-minute lap. Doesn't matter, no one's going to get mad at you at work for taking a break for 2 minutes. And if they do, then you're working for the wrong people anyway, because that's not conducive to your environment. But, if you if you're in the business world, right? You make a sales call, move that paperclip. Instant gratification knowing that you're on the right track. As I've been listening to Ready Player One, I've been listening to, because all these sci-fi stories and all these fantasy stories, they always have the hero pushing through and finding new ways to move through their obstacles, right? His instant gratification towards knowing that he was on the right track to what he was doing, right, was being the first to find the copper key. And then when he goes to open a gate, which they didn't have in the movie, by the way, when he goes to open the copper gate, right, the Conan the Barbarian music kicks in for when he's playing a game to open the gate, and that instantly tells him he's on the right track, right? Habits are powerful. They're probably the easiest thing for us to manipulate and the hardest thing for us to understand. Back to I apologize for that tangent. Back to the discussion of David Goggins, right? He continues talking about how he's this world class athlete now. He went through this whole injury thing, but he didn't want that to stop him, so he found a way to work through it, through stretches and things like that. And as you listen to the book, which I recommend you do, I recommend you listen to Atomic Habits first, and I recommend you listen to David Goggins' book, right? And try to find where he shaped his habits. Because if you can identify where other people are shaping their habits, it'll help. I mean, at least in my case, it's helped me identify where I can shape my habits. And that's the whole point of this, right? Anyone can be successful. Sometimes it takes luck. Sometimes it's all about the skill, right? But sometimes it's about habitually just being, as a habit, you always go out and strive for your best, and it shows. And another cool and interesting idea is as you begin to understand your habits, right? Most people are really good at a couple things and okay at most things, and then maybe they suck at a few things, right? Well, I really know my history. And I really, really like technology, right? I like doing this podcast. I like, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it, or at least I'm getting better. So I can use that. And maybe one day, who knows, this might be a full-time job. Not that I'm banking on that. I kind of want to be a history teacher instead, but the idea is still the same. I know what I have because I know habitually what I tend to spend my time on, and I can use that to shape the game that I play for my success. And you can too. You absolutely can, right? Anyone can find out what you habitually do, mold it, and shape it to, shape the game to you through your habits. And then both books kind of talk about that. It's just something worth considering, something that you can look at and say, wow, this is how I grew. Look at me now. Think about all the things you do, right? When I come home, I used to just sit my butt right on the couch, sit my butt in my chair and start up a video game or something, right? Ignore school for a little bit and then maybe carouse over to do some homework. Now, I come home, I check on the wife, I play with my kids a little bit, and then I go and do homework. And then if there's time at the end of the day, I get my little bit of relaxation and gratification for taking care of all these things, and I get to play an hour or two of games that I earned, right? Or I get to watch an episode of American Dad or Malcolm in the Middle, things that I like to enjoy, but I built my day around trying to reach that point. And one of the last things that I kind of want to talk about, since I've really gone on this long tangent about both these books, right, is as you're doing this, and as you're trying to discover the difference in your habit and the different things you can do to improve upon your habit, right? Just try and keep it realistic. Many people, and I mean everyone, right, will give up if something is too hard and will be bored if it is too easy. Find a way to keep your life balanced while you're developing new habits. And also, last piece of advice, right? If you're going to start trying to adjust your habits, right, the best days to do it are Monday, or the first of the month, or the first of the year, because that's when you're the most motivated. And like David Goggins says in his whole book, motivation doesn't mean it doesn't mean shit. All right, motivation doesn't mean a thing because it's fleeting. It's there 1 minute and it's gone the next. The habit that you form because you want to be better is what matters. Obviously I'm not sponsored or anything, but I do want to say that if you have the time, download Audible. It's a fantastic app. I love it. I have tons of books from, anything from the Peloponnesian War to building habits to some sci-fi fantasy books, and I get to listen to them while I'm working. Not everyone has that luxury, but I mean, you can listen to it on the car ride instead of just drowning out your day with music, especially music from, pop culture today, which is a whole nother subject I've been delving into and cannot wait to bring you that. So, I'd like to thank you for, anyone who's listening to this. I really appreciate you taking the time. Um, it's not easy for me to do this. I really enjoy it though, so I'm gonna keep doing it. And if you like what I'm saying or you like what I'm doing, feel free to, tell a friend, tell two friends. In fact, just shows that people actually like what I'm saying. And maybe you don't. Maybe you think I'm just like full of crap. And you can tell people all about that too, and then send them my way so they can make that decision themselves. But thank you guys for listening. This was another episode of The Gentleman's Jury, hosted by Robbie. You can find some, I wouldn't say exclusive, but some files that weren't able to transfer over to Spotify or things like that on our YouTube page, The Gentleman's Jury. And I wish you guys all a good night.